Most men don't live their own lives. They live for approval. Approval from women. Approval from attention. Approval from being wanted. But the most dangerous man in the room is the one who doesn't need any of it. He's calm when ignored, unmoved by rejection, unimpressed by beauty. Not because he's broken, but because he's free. This is the psychology of a man who no longer cares about girls. And once you understand his mind, you'll realize why society tries to label him as cold, arrogant, or emotionally unavailable. Because the truth is far more uncomfortable. A man who truly doesn't care about girls isn't someone who hates women or avoids connection. That's the first misunderstanding. Hatred requires emotional investment. Avoidance requires fear. But this man, he's neutral, detached, grounded in himself. His sense of worth doesn't rise when he's desired, and it doesn't collapse when he's ignored. And in a world where most men are subconsciously trained to measure their value through female attention, this mindset is rare and deeply misunderstood. Most men are conditioned early on to believe that being wanted equals being worthy. Compliments, flirting, attraction, they become proof of identity. When that validation disappears, insecurity creeps in. But the man who doesn't care about girls has already broken that loop. Somewhere in his life, he learned, often painfully, that attention is temporary, attraction is unstable, and building your entire self-image around someone else's approval is a guaranteed way to lose yourself. This mindset often forms after disappointment, not one rejection, but a pattern. Repeated emotional investments that didn't return value. Situations where effort wasn't matched, loyalty wasn't respected, or love became leverage. Over time, the brain adapts. It stops chasing what causes emotional chaos. Not because it can't feel, but because it chooses peace over intensity. This is emotional intelligence misunderstood as indifference. Psychologically, this man has shifted his reward system. Most people get dopamine from being liked. He gets it from progress, mastery, solitude, and self-control. His nervous system isn't wired to seek external reassurance anymore. That's why he appears calm. That's why rejection doesn't shake him. And that's why silence doesn't scare him. He doesn't need emotional noise to feel alive. Another key trait is internal validation. This man evaluates himself based on his own standards, not reactions. He knows who he is when no one is watching. He doesn't need to perform masculinity or charm. If someone likes him, fine. If not, also fine. His identity doesn't bend to fit desire. That alone puts him psychologically ahead of most people, because neediness is one of the strongest emotional weaknesses the brain can develop. There's also a strong link between this mindset and discipline. Men who don't care about girls often care deeply about something else: purpose, craft, growth, stability, or inner order. Their energy has direction, and once energy is focused, distractions lose power. It's not that women aren't attractive, it's that they're not the center. Desire exists, but it's not driving the vehicle. Interestingly, this detachment often triggers confusion in others. People are used to being chased, not calmly observed. When someone doesn't seek approval, it creates psychological tension. The brain tries to fill the gap. Why doesn't he care? Becomes a question that loops. And that's why indifference is often misread as mystery or confidence. Not because it's strategic, but because it's rare. Emotionally, this man feels deeply, but selectively. He doesn't open easily, not because he's closed off, but because he understands the cost of emotional exposure. He knows vulnerability should be earned, not given freely. When he connects, it's intentional. When he commits, it's slow. He's not afraid of loneliness because he's already made peace with himself, and that makes him immune to emotional manipulation. There's also an element of self-respect that shapes this psychology. A man who doesn't care about girls refuses to beg for affection, chase mixed signals, or tolerate disrespect disguised as attraction. He understands boundaries, and boundaries create distance, but they also create power. Not power over others, but power over self. He'd rather walk away than shrink himself to be accepted. This mindset often looks cold from the outside, but internally it's stable, calm, focused. There's less anxiety, less overthinking, less emotional dependency. The brain isn't constantly scanning for signs of interest or rejection. That mental space gets redirected into self-awareness. That's why these men often appear thoughtful, observant, and quiet. They're not empty, they're undistracted. Another psychological layer is acceptance of reality. He understands that attraction is unpredictable, feelings change, and people come and go. Instead of fighting that truth, He builds a life that doesn't collapse when it happens. He doesn't fantasize about idealized romance. He sees people as they are, not as potential saviors of loneliness. This realism protects him from emotional highs that always come with deeper lows. Importantly, this mindset is not anti-love. When a man like this chooses someone, it's not out of need. It's out of alignment. He doesn't look for completion. He looks for compatibility. That makes his attachment healthier, not weaker. He doesn't cling. He doesn't control. He allows. And paradoxically, that emotional independence is what creates genuine attraction. Not the desire to be wanted, but the comfort of being whole. Psychologically, this man has mastered one rare skill: emotional self-regulation. He doesn't let impulses dictate behavior. He doesn't confuse attention with connection. And he doesn't mistake chemistry for commitment. His brain operates from awareness, not urgency. That's why he doesn't rush conversations, overtext, or overinvest early. He understands pacing because he understands himself. Many people assume this mindset is something you're born with. It's not. It's learned. Often through disappointment, reflection, solitude, and growth. Through realizing that chasing affection is exhausting and that peace is more valuable than excitement without stability. This man didn't stop caring because he failed. He stopped caring because he evolved. And here's the part most people miss. He's not emotionless. He just doesn't waste emotions. He values them too much to give them away casually. He understands that emotional energy is finite, so he invests it where it grows, not where it drains. That choice alone reshapes the brain's priorities. In a society that pushes constant connection, instant validation, and romantic obsession, a man who doesn't care about girls disrupts the norm. He reminds others, without saying a word, that fulfillment doesn't come from being chosen. It comes from choosing yourself first. And once a man reaches that psychological state, he doesn't feel the need to prove it. He doesn't announce it. He simply lives differently, calm in chaos, grounded in uncertainty, unmoved by attention, unshaken by rejection. And that quiet stability, that's not indifference. That's self-mastery.